It's one skill, 15,384. I think you will remember that now. It has come by quite a few times, yes? Yeah, Scott and I are tempted to tattoo it on our arms, and then every year we have to update, of course. Not a good idea, not scalable. If I told you you only need one skill, you probably think this guy's from Amsterdam and on drugs. Well, I'm not on drugs, I'm from Amsterdam. So you got half right. But the thing is, you immediately think you need a certificate or certification in a certain tool, right? Do you need a driver license for driving a Ford or a Chrysler? No, you have a driver license. If you've seen one tool, probably you can manage them all. And if you need a certification, think again. Maybe the tool's too complex. So actually, let's flip it. The one skill is actually about answering 3 questions. And those 3 questions, many, many times, marketing people working in the marketing department cannot answer. And these questions are so important that if I wake you up drunk in a bar, somewhere in a hotel room, you should be able to tell those 3 questions. Right? Let's fantasize a little bit. You're in a hotel room, you had a hangover, you're woken up, it's a crazy scenario, but never happens, right? And you were woken up by a friend who starts screaming because in the bathroom is a tiger. And then you hear another scream by another friend saying, I'm missing a tooth, what's happening? Another friend you can't find, and then you hear a baby cry in a closet, and somebody knocks on the door. It's a crazy Hollywood movie, right? I think you remember which one? Good. The knock on the door is your manager. And you're completely confused, hungover, half drunk, and you go like, oh my God, the 3 questions. And the 3 questions are, who's your biggest customer? What is the most sold product to that customer? And what is the margin? Now, I teach at business schools or universities. Many, many marketers are not able to answer that question. The only thing we do is we start hoarding tools and data. And then hoping, as a miracle, we get the answers. And we don't. So I would like to show you, this is my agenda for today, a visual one. Show you how things have been developing and that we really need to dig into this skill. We just spoke about the data being so important. We're going to dig in deep because biggest customer, most sold tool, most sold product to the person, and then your margin, that is all about data. And it's easier than you think. And yet we don't do it because we are so preoccupied by tools, by data. So the blue line here is, we see on the left-hand side, there was software, then there was SaaS, AI. The line is coming down. Everything is being democratized. So it's easier for non-experts to execute a task. I will show you in a second a few of the details that we've been looking into. The other skill that we now have to develop is value engineering. We have to create value for the company. There's no longer an excuse like, sorry, I don't have a driver license for a Ford, I drive a Chrysler. No, you can play with any tool. You can create a graph without knowing your coding. So that's what I would like to dig into. Because all too long, and it's a nice analogy to make it very simple, we've been focused on buying the best Ferrari. It doesn't look like one, I admit, but it's red. Give me that. So the Ferrari is what we've been selling. And you see Gartner, for instance, analysts saying, this is the state of the art. Yes, and we end up in a ditch all the time. Maybe you're not mature enough to drive that car. Maybe you don't even need a Ferrari. Do you need a Ferrari? You would love to have one, right? But you don't need it necessarily to make sure you drive that experience. There's the word, experience. All too often we don't talk about the experience, the destination. So we are preoccupied by tuning and buying the best car and tuning it, but we don't know how to drive it to the right destination. So we have driving skills, certificates, certification programs, onboarding, but we don't know what the client wants. And I can tell you, if you know what the client wants, most important customer, most sold product, margin, this becomes very simple. Suddenly you don't need all the tools, you need a few features, and those features are super critical. You need a few data points and a few content items. And then suddenly you can run a lot of experimentation and drive home revenue. You can show the money. So we are moving with AI more and more from technology first, really task focused, make sure we drive this campaign and run it, to customer first skill, more outcome based. And a little bit about me, because not all of you have heard of me, most of you maybe. I teach at business schools and universities. I have a Martech data warehouse. I run it with Scott Brinker. We have the tools, of course. We have stacks, but we also have a lot of requirements. So we do a lot of research there, and we publish about it. So that's very important to understand. That's how we come to a lot of these conclusions. And we test it on real-life companies, of course, the brands we work for. So if we talk about technology first, let's talk about the impact of AI on Martech. A little bit on Martech and then what AI is doing. And I can give it away, it's not about the technology. All too often we say we don't have the right tool. That's an excuse. You need to be able to explain why it's not the right tool. And then link it back to the most sold tool, most sold product to the customer. So if we take this one here, the landscape has been growing and is not coming down. I think you've seen this graph every now and then. It's just growing and growing. There's a lot of growth, replacement, but also consolidation. In this year, 2023 to 24, we saw a humongous increase of GenAI tools. The year after, 1,200 tools went out of the landscape, no longer in business. Our first instinct was, the GenAI hype, it wasn't true. The 1,200 tools, 80–90% of those were 5 years or older. So we're starting to replace stuff. Just so you know, it's not slowing down. Many times people say, okay, so all these new tools, are they the size of a HubSpot, a Salesforce? No, they're very small tools, and we call it atomization. This is something Scott also talked about, the long tail. And this is now a long tail that has been shown for year on year on year as we collect those stacks. So it is something that is persistent. It's something we really need. We need the big tools and we need the small tools. The real innovation is in the small tools and then adopted and migrated, merged with the big tools. And we thought for a while, okay, those long tail tools, they will disappear. Again, they have a very important role inside the stack. And like I said, it's the innovation. They bring a lot of new ideas. We see some disappear, some are taken over, some are copied, and that's going on for over a decade now. So maybe that's normal. Maybe we should be waiting for a consolidation. The question about consolidation is a very interesting one. Many people ask us, okay, so this year, when will consolidation happen? They confuse two things. Consolidation in a market isn't happening, but you should consolidate or rationalize in your stack. And that is the real question they are asking. How do I do this? Again, you need to have that one skill to reverse engineer into your tooling and your data. What you see here is not only are there more tools, there's a lot of in-house apps. Scott talked about it in Hypertail. A lot of in-house apps that are built to fill the gaps, to experiment, to try things. This is what some of the IT departments call shadow IT or point solutions, but they're not. They're very important pieces of the puzzle to make sure you can build that what you need to try it out, fail or succeed, and 95% failing is perfect. If you get the 5% right, you're in a good spot. So that is where you see the Hypertail coming in, and this is of course the ecosystem for AI agents. They are really thriving here, vibe coding. That's what you see happening here. So at some point in time, we will not be able to complete the super graphic anymore, the landscape anymore, because there's so much in-house stuff built. And that's okay. So that's a little bit on Martech until today. And then came Gen AI. There was a post by a gentleman in Silicon Valley. He's running a startup on apps in the AI space. It's called Relay app. But what happened is he put it online and he said, look, I have here an overview. It looks like an org chart. But this is me and 40 agents. And this is my marketing team. Now, I'm not showing you to tell you, okay, AI agents are going to replace everybody. That's not what I'm saying. What is really interesting is that everybody was asking, requesting this overview. They were saying, okay, I want to see exactly how you did this. And it resembles, for me, this is where human talent and skill sets and teams and orgs and software are merging. It's more about capabilities. So it's no longer, I need a tool to solve my problem. It is humans solving problems, and sometimes they use a tool for that, or a feature set, or a data set, or a combination. I don't care. This was what hit me most. So many people were requesting this, and I just zoomed in on one. Then came a question. It was like, I don't know, thousands and thousands of comments, but one caught my eye. I didn't read them all, but one caught my eye, where somebody said, okay, so I'm in pharma. Can I use this? And the guy said, hell no, we're like 5 to 10 people, Silicon Valley software company, you're global farm. No, don't do that. So then the next question came, okay, how can you build some org charts that are relevant for your industry? And we happen to have that data, so we can now run easily an org chart for every single type of industry. This is retail, manufacturing, professional service. You see different columns here. Those are different types of software, and some are more important in pharma than they are in banking, or in professional services, or in manufacturing. So this helps really, I think, to understand that it's more about capabilities. It's no longer about a tool that solves my problem. A tool never solves a problem if you don't know what you're trying to solve. And I've implemented a lot of software tools because for 4 years I was heading up an R&D team in Germany of a marketing technology company called nowadays Uptempo. I don't know if you know it. And all the escalations that happened about features and not delivering was about, I had one simple question, and that really reframed everything. Is like, what are you trying to solve? Every single time there was an escalation, they could not answer that question. I said, there's your problem. If you know what you're trying to solve, then suddenly everything becomes a lot easier. So software is a bit like furniture, right? You need a TV set to point it at. So where's your TV set? Where's your goal? If you don't know it, it's not going to happen. So that's all about the technology. Now let's move into the exciting stuff, the customer first stuff. The skill is what I call follow the money. Very important. Be like a Sherlock Holmes, and this is what I do with the people, the participants at the business university. These are people like CMOs, 20, 30 years in their job. And it's so exciting to work with them, and they follow the money and say, you have to be a Sherlock Holmes, because everybody will tell you, no, we tried that, no, data science didn't figure it out. Don't stop there, just continue, and be like a pit bull. Never let go, because there is gold in your data. Not new data, the existing data. So let's work on that. I will give you an example. There was a global manufacturer of laboratory tools for professors at universities. And they went public, I think in America. It's a German company, went public in America. And I said, so how does your funnel look like? And they said, oh, that's very simple. We have events where people come, and then they go to a webinar because they want to be educated, and then they go to the product page, and then they order. Okay, interesting, I said. So how do you know this? Yeah, Frans, that makes sense. It's logical. That's where I get very suspicious. Show me the data. Well, yeah, we have Salesforce, we have On24, we have Acton. I don't know if you know the tool, it's a marketing automation tool. Okay, I said, can you give me the data? Yeah, seriously? We have to ask IT, just a CSV file, please. Just give me one of each. And I was looking at the timestamps where which email address behaved and where they are. And the results were stunning. They did everything right to chase out the leads of their funnel. Because events was last. Product page was first. And they said, the first reaction was like, your data is wrong. It's not my data, it's your data. So that's not flying. Okay, then maybe we have to talk to some of those professors. And there it became very interesting. The professors told us, they said, look, I'm working for 10 years with this product now. I need a better one because it's getting old. So I go to the product page to order the next version. If we compare it with Harry Potter, it went from the Nimbus 1000 to the Nimbus 2000. That's what they did. Makes sense, actually. And then they find out, the Nimbus 2000 has all new specs. We need to have a webinar. We need to learn a little bit better what this thing does. I'm behind. And then, as a final step, we said, but why do you go to an event then? I want to know if you guys are still the same, if you have the same way of communication. I want to look you in the eye and say, okay, this is the same vibe. You went stock listed. You went to the stock exchange. So I want to figure that out. So they did everything right in their automation flows to chase people out of the funnel. How crazy is that? And this is a big company. Another example, we found out, by the way, by fixing this, that ROI went through the roof, of course. For every dollar that we requested, 17 came back. But there's so many more examples. This is a nice example of a management team thinking they got it right. So they gave this person, a lady, CMO, the task, okay, grow the deal size value by 5 to 7%. It was completely bullshit, but it looks specific. For a specific client, the potential client segment. So I asked the CMO, so how big is that segment? Frans, you don't understand, this is the task, this is what I have, show me the data. And she made a pie chart, and I don't know if you can see it, 0.2%. 0.2%. You're not going to move the needle. And I was really excited when I saw this graph, and she was almost crying. So she said, I'm so going to get fired. This is horrible. I said, no, you missed the point. Here you have a segment called incidental clients. For the life of it, I don't even know what it means, but you call it this way. And you have gold clients. Okay, what are those gold clients doing differently than the incidental clients? And we found it out. It's like they're buying, the gold clients buy like 6 times a month. They order stuff. By the way, they were selling sprinklers around Europe. So 5 to 6 times, sorry. And the incidental clients did only twice or less. Okay, so what can we do there? Well, how can we transform and make sure that we get these incidental clients gold clients? And we couldn't find it out. What was the trigger? What was the difference? Because remember, every single client, once upon a time, was a lead. So we can backtrace that in our data and figure out, okay, what did they do? How did they move the needle? And we found out something weird. These gold clients didn't ask for quotes. So they just ordered. And from there, everything started rolling. This is what we did a lot of data. And funny enough, 80% shows you, okay, this is not making a difference, but the 20% is. So they were not asking for quotes, and incidental ones were. We found out there was a kind of a discount for some of the regions where they were using discounts that really worked. I'm not saying just use discounts and that's a wrong thought. But in the data, it really showed that it makes a difference. So why not offer everybody, every incidental client that orders and comes to your shop, the counter or the office, offer them the same discount? They aligned it with all the account executives, and in no time they had a very good ROI. And this lady was asking for not $1, but 100K. So you can imagine what she, earned herself back a couple of times, and her team. She didn't need a new CDP to figure this out, or a BI system. She didn't even need to clean up the data. There were gaps in the data. Here and there we had to make small assumptions. And this is the most scary part, making assumptions in data. No, it's very easy. Because if you don't know your customer, then who does in this universe? And yes, you'll probably get it wrong somehow, some point, but you need to have a very good bandwidth, and then you should be safe. And these are just 2 examples. There are many, many more. It's B2B, B2C, even in charity. UNICEF is in here as well. Time and time again. So on average, as a proud professor, I always try to track how are we doing. On average, for every dollar, we asked 16.3 back. That's a crazy number. And you go, okay, Amsterdam, probably a bit optimistic, smoking stuff. No, we are very, very conservative. So it's a 3-month course, and I'm not selling the course, it's through a business school, but it's in 3 months, all plans were completed in time, but they were already approved by the management. Also, the lady who thought she was losing her job showed it to management, these new numbers like, sorry, you got it wrong. By the way, of all these cases, 30% of the management requests, like do this, is wrong, is off. So be a Sherlock Holmes and a Pitbull, because you have to second guess what they are asking from you. Otherwise, they may be setting you up for failure. So what you have to do is then figure out what is the real value that we can achieve. So 90% were approved, 80%, 85% was already being implemented. So the first day they come to class, they are a bit nervous, like, Frans, how will you do the exam? Halfway the course, they don't even think about the exam because they presented it internally so many times. And we only took conservative ROI projections. What does that mean? Okay, in your funnel, it's stuck in the 2nd or 3rd level, I don't care. Normally, we see in the market, based on benchmarks, 15% conversion. You do 3. So let's make it 5. As conservative as that. So you're always on the safe side. And many times you see, because we focus on the biggest customer and the biggest product, then you can start copy-pasting to different regions or to different product-market combinations. We didn't factor that in. That was all out. So the fun starts after this. So in essence, you could say that you're building a portfolio of small experiments. And from here you can start working. And here, in every post-it that you see here, there's a handful of data points, a handful of content items, and a handful of features that you need. And based on usage data from software companies, we know that 12% of the features are used most. You don't need all the features. Now you know which 12%. So far, so good? Good. Last part, because now it's up to you. How do you become a value engineer? We're all linked to Progress, and we've done some great work together. We launched 6 industry reports because technology and stacks are really behaving differently by industry. That's what we see in our database. And we published about every industry, what is the big bet? What is changing in your industry? If you take, for instance, education, in the old days, you could just go to school and the rest of your life, you were done. Today, no longer. 4 to 6 years, you need to, reinvent yourself. So now that means that the way we engage as universities, schools, and what have you, we engage differently. So we started to dissect big bets and figure out what does that mean for your technology. So to go in a bit more detail, one page is really important. This one, the 3 big bets, it's a table, but it's more than a table. It's value-based selling. Because you sell differently at different levels in the organization. And that's what we included here. So the one big shift, for instance, like I just said, in education, then we dissected 3 different ways you differently engage with the market. So go-to-market strategy, big bets, and then finally, Martech. What type of Martech is underpinning that? And to give you an example, this is for banking, a different one. You can see how well certain marketing technologies are performing for banking. And we go from high value, you see this line going down, from high value to lower value. It continues, but we focused on the top. These ones are in trouble. And you can see the maturity, this is a scale from 1 to 5, maturity levels are relatively high. So banks are really trying to do the best they can and still not get the value. And what we saw, and what you will see in the documents as well, that in generative AI, they're now experimenting in banking a lot with replacing the customer service and chatbots with AI, enhancing it, replacing it. So all these kinds of, this is just one detail out of the many reports and pages we have in there. But how cool would it be if you now can have your stack, your company, compared to the benchmark and know exactly where you should improve? And that is something we developed as well. We just need your stack. You can submit a URL or you can submit a form. And we turn out and we produce this report over here. And I will explain quickly how it looks like and what it does, because it's showing on 3 levels where you are. On the highest level, strategic level, tool level, and feature and capability level. As simple as that. The first one is the most important one. This is the slide, the insight nobody asks for. Everybody loves. I've seen even IT and marketing almost hug each other. That's scary. But it works. And I'll explain you what this is. This is the maturity levels, 1 to 5 again, for your strategy, your process, and your technology. And what we do wrong, and you see it here as well, this is, the gray one is what outperformers do, the top 30 performing companies in an industry. And it always shows that it's slightly higher there in strategy than in process than technology. And it's very simple. You cannot automate something that you haven't standardized, and you cannot standardize something that you haven't defined. And yet we're trying to solve with technology a strategy problem. And this is the point where IT and marketing go like, okay, that's why the CRM project went south. How can you implement a CRM if you don't know what an MQL is, if you haven't defined an MQL? And who owns it, at what stage? You know, if you lost a deal, does it go back to marketing? Does it stay with sales? Oh, you haven't defined that. So what are we implementing? So that's the first part. Now we can focus on technology. These are the top 7 tools in this industry that you should be looking at. I think this is banking, if I'm not mistaken. Interestingly enough, there's a lot more. So I always distinguish in red, amber, green. I'm only showing you the green. This is where you drive value. And what does green mean? The more mature we get, the more value we get. Red means the more mature, less value we get. That's what we see with outperformers. So maybe stay away from that, unless you have abundant resources and you can just do what you want. This is nice because now you see, and this is a stack in dire straits, they only have a marketing automation platform. The rest they're missing out on. The beauty is that you can also compare multiple divisions, business units, or you compare maybe different countries. And this is an example of a bank in Europe. This is headquarters, and this is a local country. And you can do multiple. You can see exactly where the excellence center are of, for instance, marketing automation or dashboarding, and you can start learning from each other. And then finally, you can look into your digital experience capabilities. This is where we group feature sets together and say these are the core features and functionalities, capabilities that you need to be able to do to perform digital experience. Content management, there you see, they're outperforming the market. Don't over-index there, you're good. And by the way, the highest value is where you see this line going up. That's customer data. That's where they're falling short. So look into the tool and see what you can fix there. If this one, by the way, the orange one is way too high, maybe, and you still have a problem with your, you think you have a problem with your technology, it's mostly your skill set. So maybe you need to work on your skill set because every feature is there. So that's how we do it. And this is a report, you know, as soon as we get the stack in, we can turn it around in a day. Well, actually 15 seconds, but every now and then we need to eyeball it because some clients, you know, misspell tools or put them in the wrong places. But that's how we do it. So it feels like Christmas a little bit now, right? Download the 6 industry reports. You can start a one-on-one benchmark report. Schedule a call with me also after a report, very important. I can talk you through it. I will also explain, what I see and what are my takeaways, and then we can talk to you, knowing what your customer does. And yeah, I'd love to connect on LinkedIn. If you want the presentation, then just DM me. That was it for now. Thank you.